Arab-Israeli true story. Eastern Courier, November 2nd, 2023. October 2023, which was originally not peaceful, will eventually be remembered in history as an eventful month. Just as the brothers in Eastern Europe were in full swing, suddenly a sequel was staged in the Middle East ahead of schedule. After all, peace lasts for a long time, and people don't know how to fight. It is indeed difficult to accept this sudden change. The Middle East, where the Garden of Eden in the Bible is located, should become a paradise on earth. With the label good weather, peace and contentment, it is quite sad that it is so turbulent now. At the end of the Qing dynasty, the great talent Mr. Qi Chao Liang geniusly coined the term four ancient civilizations. The so-called four ancient civilizations are actually not countries but regions. This is because in ancient times, there were no fixed national boundaries, only spheres of influence. Therefore, a more accurate definition should be the four major ancient civilizations in the world. They are, respectively, 1. Ancient Babylon, located in Western Asia, present-day Iraq. 2. Ancient Egypt, located in North Africa, present-day Egypt. 3. Ancient India, located in South Asia, the Indus River Basin, present-day Pakistan. 4. China. The ancient Babylonian civilization and the ancient Egyptian civilization were geographically connected and formed the same bright moon. Therefore, this area is also called the Fertile Crescent. 4,000 years ago, in the Mesopotamia plains among the Sumerians, a great good man who believed in the only God appeared. The tribal leader Abram, who lived in the city of Ur in the south, was favored by God because of its integrity. Therefore, God promised him to lead his people and move to the other end of the new moon, the Canaan region, the promised land flowing with milk and honey. Therefore, they became Hebrews again. At God's instruction, Abram changed his name to Abraham. Abraham's first wife, Sarah, was infertile due to her old age, so she gave Hagar, an Egyptian slave girl, to her husband. So Hagar became pregnant and gave birth to a son, whom she named Ishmael. As for Hagar's title, according to the synopsis of the story, it should be equivalent to concubine, but some documents record it as equal wife. This difference in positioning should be a problem of later translation, because in ancient times, even the written language was immature, and even the original cuneiform had been lost long ago, not to mention the detailed laws and regulations. It cannot be as detailed and complete as modern society. Therefore, whether it is wife or concubine, it should be artificially fabricated by later generations based on the social cognition of the time during translation. The difference between wife and concubine is 1. The children of the wife are direct descendants and have the right to inherit family property. 2. The children of a concubine are collateral line and have no inheritance rights. The most typical example is the order of succession to the throne. First, the male princes in the direct line must be sorted by age. The relationship between wife and concubine extends to the political level. The most interesting one is undoubtedly Chairman Chiang Kai-shek during the Republic of China. The chairman often referred to graduates of Whampoa Military Academy as their direct descendants. And the mantra he never forget is, those who are not of my race must have different minds. After Hagar gave birth to a son, Sarah also gave birth to a son because of God's promise and named him Isaac. So, the excitement begins here. 1. The descendants of Isaac, sons of Sarah, are the Jews today. 2. The descendants of Ishmael, son of Hagar, are today's Arabs. Therefore, Jews and Arabs are half-brothers. The word Israel comes from the name of a direct descendant of Isaac, who got his name from his wrestling with angel. After Sarah died at the age of 127, Abraham married Keturah and gave birth to 6 sons. In this way, After Abraham ascended to heaven, at the age of 175, his descendants continued to spread and gradually spread across the vast Arabian Peninsula. Therefore, Abraham also became the co-lord of the world in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Regarding the inheritance of the family line, there was indeed a custom in the Mesopotamian plain at that time. If the wife was unable to do the job, she would give her husband a female slave. This was probably a common phenomenon all over the world at that time. For example, the traditional Chinese concept of 3 wives and 4 concubines actually has rules. Concubinage must meet the following conditions. 1. The man is over 40 years old. No heirs. 3. The principal wife agrees. After Hagar became pregnant at that time, she despised her master Sarah and acted many times in a disobedient way. So Sarah treated Hagar harshly. Hagar, who was pregnant, fled into the wilderness. An angel of God appeared to her, asking her to return to her husband's home, and promised to give her a son. He also told her to name this son Ishmael, said he would be a rough and aggressive man. When Abraham was 86 years old, Ishmael was born. 14 years later, God promised Abraham and Sarah a son, Isaac. After Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast to celebrate. During the meal, Ishmael mocked Isaac. Sarah then asked Abraham to drive Hagar and her son away. Abraham was in trouble, but God told him to do it. After Hagar, mother and son left home, they went to their parents' home in Egypt. In the wilderness, their drinking water ran out, and thanks to the preservation of the gods, they obtained spring water and survived. So they stayed. God also promised Hagar that the descendants of Ishmael would become a great nation later. Ishmael became a hunter and married an Egyptian girl. The Apostle Paul once used Hagar and Sarah as a metaphor. 1. The servant Hagar represents the Old Testament at Mount Sinai, just as Ishmael was Abraham's son born of human will. All Jewish Christians who insist on binding believers with the Mosaic law are the spiritual descendants of the slave Hagar. 2. What Sarah, a free woman, represents is the new covenant of Christ. Just as Isaac was the son of Abraham, who relied on God's promise by faith, all Christians who are not bound by the carnal ordinances of the law are spiritual descendants of Sarah. Those who are saved by works are bound by the law. Those who are saved by grace and through faith are free. Adhering to monotheism, the Jews have thrived and lived in purity for generations. But 1. Not much nectar is tasted. 2. Drink a lot of bitter water. In most cases, the Jews were dominated, bullied, and enslaved by Gentiles. There are 1. Egyptians in the 16th century BC. Due to natural disasters, the Jews left their homes and went to Egypt, where they were enslaved for 400 years, until Moses and Joshua, father and son, led them out of Egypt and back home. 2. Assyrians in the 8th century BC. The Assyrian Empire conquered the northern areas of Israel and exiled its residents to other areas of Assyria. 3. Babylonians in the 6th century BC. The kingdom of Babylon conquered the kingdom of Judah and exiled its residents to Babylon, known historically as the Babylonian captivity. 4. Persians in the 5th century BC. The Persian Empire conquered the kingdom of Babylon, released the Jews back to Jerusalem, and rebuilt the temple. 5. Greeks in the 4th century BC. Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire and brought the Jews under the influence of Hellenistic culture. 6. Romans in 63 BC. The Roman Empire conquered Judea and established the province of Judea. In the 1st century AD, a man of God named Jesus appeared among the descendants of the Jewish King David. He established Christian doctrine. The Old Testament of the Bible had hundreds of prophecies about him and the miracles he performed himself. He amazed the people in terms of preaching and evangelism, but at the same time, it also offends the fundamental interests of the ruling class. Therefore, Jesus was eventually murdered by the authorities. However, his disciples and a group of good men and women continued to sacrifice their lives and spread the gospel of Jesus from Palestine to the whole world. As for the person of Jesus, later generations have different definitions. 1. Christianity believes that he is the Savior promised by God. 2. Judaism and Islam consider him a prophet, not a savior. 3. Outsiders, they think he is as famous as Socrates and Confucius, the three great philosophers in ancient times. Islam, among them, originated in the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century AD. Its founder was Muhammad, who received the revelation of Allah in Mecca in 610 AD. Muhammad then moved to the holy city of Medina and began to spread Islam on a large scale. He died in 632 AD. Islam is mainly composed of pure Arabs from Saudi Arabia. In the current sense, Palestinians are Arabized mixed race, people currently living in Palestine, so they are pan-Arab. Palestine is a place name, not a country name. It originated in the ancient Roman era, and its scope roughly includes the current Greater Israel area and Transjordan region. 40 years after the death of Jesus, the Jews launched a great riot against Roman rule, centered in the holy city of Jerusalem. After the uprising was suppressed, the holy city was once again destroyed, and the people expelled. However, it was not that the Jews were completely exterminated and dispersed. Some Jews remained in their homeland. For example, people who did not participate in the great uprising against Rome. The Jews who were dispersed all over the world were discriminated against and oppressed everywhere, and their social status was no different from that of the famous gypsies who wandered around the world. They belonged to the lowest level of society. Accordingly, people tried to give various reasons to explain, but most of them avoided the more serious ones because the key factor lies in the asocial personality of the Jewish nation. Like a drop of oil in a sink, it always floats on the surface of the water and never dissolves in the water. Its performance is 1. Religion is hereditary and is only passed down within the family and not to outsiders. 2. The race is pure and intermarriage with foreign races is prohibited. And if you don't fit in with others, you must be a different kind of person. You must be an outsider. The suffering of the Jews has long been prophesied in the Bible, especially from Roman rulers. However, after Constantine the Great of the Roman Empire won a great victory at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312 AD, he said he saw a cross and heard the voice of God. So he completely lifted the ban on Christianity and implemented a series of policies to benefit Christianity, including declaring Christianity as the state religion, building large numbers of churches, and prohibiting pagan marriages. On his deathbed, he converted to Christianity. With the endorsement of the Roman emperor, Christianity quickly became popular throughout Europe and around the world. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are collectively known as the three major monotheistic religions in the world. They share the same ancestors and believe in a God who creates and rules all things. Although these three religions have many differences and conflicts in terms of beliefs, history, culture, etc., they have more similarities. For example, 1. Believe in the same God Jehovah. 2. Consecrate Jerusalem as a common holy place. 3. Everyone thinks Abraham is a prophet. 4. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem is the place where Abraham sacrificed his son to God, the place where the Jews built the temple, and the place where Islam ascends to the sky at night. 5. Both Judaism and Christianity believe that the Old Testament is God's revelation, while Islam believes that the Quran is a word-for-word revelation from the Creator, commanded by angels. The following are the number of believers in the three major monotheistic religions today. 1. Christianity, 2.4 billion, accounting for 31% of the global population. 2. Islam, 1.9 billion, accounting for 25% of the global population. 3. Judaism, 14 million, accounting for 0.2% of the global population. The numbers show that Judaism pales in comparison mainly because Jews are traditionally conservative and regard their religion as private. Christianity, by contrast, is open to all human beings. Because of this, the establishment of Christianity is called the Universal Church. In addition to their religious beliefs, Jews are unique and leading in the world's financial industry, but otherwise it's bland and lackluster. This is not because Jews are taking an eccentric approach, but rather because other industries are restricted to Jews. The persecution of Jews reached its peak during the two world wars, especially under fascist Germany. As a result, the Jews actively prepared to establish an independent country. At the end of the 19th century, Zionism became popular. Zion is a Hebrew word meaning the homeland of the Jews. Zionism is a political movement aiming to establish a Jewish state. At that time, Jews in Europe suffered various persecutions from anti-Semitism. It further stimulated the Jewish people's desire to build a nation. The goal of Zionism is to establish a sovereign, an independent state in Palestine, dominated by Jews. To this end, British Foreign Secretary Balfour wrote to the British Zionist Union, Vice Chairman Rothschild in 1917, announcing that the British government supported the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine, called the Balfour Declaration. This statement is the first official announcement from the world's mainstream society to officially support the return of Jews to Palestine. It has had a profound impact on the history of the Middle East and is also a fundamental cause of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In the return to Palestine, the Jewish consortium played a central role. They helped returning Jews purchase land from their trustees, the British. As a result, more and more local Arabs took their money and left. Over time, the Arabs felt that they were taken over the magpie's nest. So peaceful protests turned into violent confrontations. The trustee, the United Kingdom, had no choice but to take the dispute to the newly established United Nations in order to escape. In 1947, the United Nations arbitrated the racial conflict between Palestine and Israel. There were two options at the time. 1. The establishment of separate states between Palestine and Israel. This was Resolution 181 that was later issued. The Arabs have long said that as long as Israel is established as a state, they will strangle it in its infancy. Therefore, the choice of this resolution means war. 2. The reunification of Palestine and Israel, and the establishment of a nation. If it takes place, although there will still be many contradictions. After all, national affairs become family affairs. At least it will not be bloody and death. The United Nations was originally composed of the United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and China, the four major victors in World War II. Later, Britain forced France to join the alliance, forming the 5 permanent members to this day. The purpose of this organization is to coordinate international conflicts and avoid war. Historically, the authority of the United Nations has only been used effectively. 1. The first time was the Arab-Israeli nation-building strategy. 2. The second time was when he was involved in the Korean Civil War. In both respects, the United Nations' performance is somewhat unsatisfactory, so its credibility is discredited, especially for Arab-Israeli nation-building. Since war under the partition plan is unavoidable, it is better to unify and build a nation, with the transition period being managed by the United Nations and sending personnel and troops to supervise its implementation. Not surprisingly, in 1948, when Israel's first Prime Minister, Ben-Gurion, had just announced the establishment of the state, he was attacked by a group of Arab coalition forces. Since then, the war between Arab and Israeli has continued, and 5 Middle East wars have been fought. The fight only made the sky dark and the earth dark, with flying sand and rocks. Seeing that force could not solve the problem, the Arab countries were divided. Egypt and Jordan reconciled with Israel respectively. Since then, the Arab League collapsed. Later, the Palestinian mainstream, the Fatah faction, also announced that it would give up explosive power. Then, there is no political or military power equal to Israel in the Arab world. Those occasional local conflicts obviously cannot solve any problems. At this time, it is the best time for the United Nations to take action regarding the land flowing with milk and honey. Although this is the case, it is not due to heaven's grace, but to the hard work and wisdom of the Jews themselves. As we all know, in desert areas, a drop of water is as expensive as oil. Since the founding of Israel, water shortage has been a huge problem. Especially the Negev region in the south is pure desert. In order to obtain water sources, the Israelis are very imaginative and play the Chinese idiom catching wind and shadow as a game to the extreme. 1. On the shore of the Mediterranean Sea, set up large net to intercept the water vapor flowing in the air and collect it bit by bit into the container. 2. Transport containers of water to fields and use drip irrigation to feed the crops, just like feeding a baby. These miracles on earth are obviously the inspiration for the spirit of ownership after the founding of the country. As far as the founding of the country is concerned, that is the long-cherished wish of the Jews for thousands of years. It is a pity that in the history of the Jews, there was only one short-lived founding of the nation. That was 102 BC. 1. The first king, Saul. In the end, he was defeated and committed suicide. 2. The second king, David, reigned for 40 years and died well. 3. The third king, Solomon, King David's prince, came to the throne by inheritance and received mixed reviews. Wise in the early stage, corrupt in the later stage. In the end, country was sent away. Among them, King David is the most complete image. Today's Israeli flag and national emblem follows the emblem of King David, the six-pointed star, also called the Star of David. Although the Jews were not good at building a country, they were very good at running it. Many of them made achievements in foreign countries. Representative ones, such as 1. Job, an Egyptian pharaoh in the 16th century BC, who became the prime minister of Egypt during the Ptolemaic dynasty. 2. Daniel, during the Babylonian period in the 6th century BC, he became the prime minister of Babylon. 3. Benjamin Disraeli served as British prime minister in the 19th century. 4. Henry Kissinger served as a secretary of state in the 20th century. Jews are good at planning and research. They only account for 0.2% of the world's population, but they have won 22% of the Nobel Prizes alone. After the founding of the State of Israel, Jews scattered around the world were called upon to return. The standard for identifying ancestry is based on maternal lineage. For example, 1. When leaving Egypt, one tribe did not follow Moses back to Canaan, but went as far away as Ethiopia. When they returned to Israel, they had completely evolved into a typical African indigenous image. 2. During the Song dynasty, some Jews moved to Kaifeng, China, and settled there. By the Ming dynasty, with the passing of the last rabbi, the Jewish community was completely Chinese-sized. Even their appearance is the same as that of Han Chinese, since the Jews can tolerate rebellious and mutated members of the tribe than to tolerate their Arab brothers. I am afraid that there is an extra layer of paper between them. In terms of religion, Judaism, Christianity, and Muslims all believe in the same God and the same Hebrew Bible. This is the basis for Arab-Israeli reconciliation. What's more, in history, the relationship between countries has been peaceful and scattered, with fights and breaks. One day, Arab and Israel will get back together and recognize each other as brothers. This ending may happen tomorrow. Today, the map published by Israel shows that the national borders include the West Bank and the Gaza Strip areas inhabited by Arabs. It would actually be better for the Palestinians if these two areas were turned into autonomous regions of Israel. After all, Israel is a developed country with a per capita GDP of more than $40,000. In Palestine, the per capita GDP is only $3,000. The difference is extremely huge. Maybe Muslims disdain secular life now, but historically, they have made great contributions to world civilization. 1. Mathematics. Muslim mathematicians have made many contributions in the fields of algebra, geometry, and trigonometry. They invented many mathematical concepts, such as zero, algebra, and algorithms. These concepts had a profound impact on the development of modern mathematics. 2. Medicine. Muslim doctors have made many contributions in the fields of anatomy, pharmacology, and surgery. They invented many medical instruments and surgical techniques such as surgical gloves, surgery, and eye surgery, which have had a profound impact on the development of modern medicine. 3. Culture and art. Muslim culture covers many fields, such as music, dance, literature, architecture, and visual arts. Muslim culture and art reached its peak during the Middle Ages, facing the highly nervous Arab-Israeli relationship. As a responsible international community, we should not form cliques and add fuel to the fire at this moment. Instead, we should actively bring together people, reduce pressure and vent anger. In order to achieve, smile to forget grudges, and jointly eat from the same pot, rock the oar in the same boat. This is not only the inevitable necessity of human evolution, but also the purpose of the teachings of these three major religions. If you continue to expand your imagination, look at the world with your eyes open, and focus on the past and present lives of the Middle East, especially the Arab-Israeli brothers, then the key to unlocking its mystery does not seem to be a fantasy. 1. If the two parties in the struggle instead engage in dialogue with their common ancestors and change national affairs into family matters, they will inevitably turn big things into small things and trivial things into non-things. 2. Be open and inclusive. Abandon the grievances of ancestors and nations and integrate into each other. After all, the sea accepts hundreds of rivers, and tolerance means greatness. Standing on a wall with thousands of feet. No desire means strength. War is ultimately a business. To do business, you have to make a profit. No one will do business that does not make profit. Relative to the past and present. 1. Ancient wars were profitable, either gaining territory or defending territory. So wars are meaningful. 2. Today's war is not profitable. We cannot gain new territory and cannot lose old territory. So the war is meaningless. Today's war is about fratricide. Both sides suffer. Civilization regresses and both humans and gods are angry.